Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. It's Chip Towers back for Towers Take Live on Facebook. It's a beautiful day. It's Thursday, March 21st in the year of our Lord 2019. And I am glad that you're here with me today. March 21st, 2019 probably means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I think it's the second day of spring as the seasons go. We know that it is the second day of spring football practice for the Georgia Bulldogs for sure. It's the first day of the NCAA tournament, of course, and I hope you had an opportunity to partake in the Dog Nation's bracket challenge. Um, that's always a lot of fun. Obviously, is to pick the teams to win the NCAA tournament. It sure does make this first week the most exciting week of the year, really sports wise, for a lot of people. Really, really exciting to see who advances. I think we all expect the Dukes and North Carolinas of the world to go pretty deep. But those first rounds are especially for me at least fun to try to predict. And there's going to be some really cool prizes that Connor Riley has gotten together for us all, or for all of you guys anyway. For the winner of that bracket. So I'm excited about that. It's a lot more exciting when when your team is in it, such as Georgia. So it'll be interesting to see whether the Bulldogs can come from 2-16 in the SEC this year to an NCAA tournament team next year. Certainly, Tom Crean is doing his best to make that happen by getting commits from Ant Man, Anthony Edwards, and four other top 100 players. As it turns out, are four total top 100 players. Pretty incredible. What else is going? In addition to Georgia football, it's a huge weekend for Georgia baseball. I don't know how much you guys out there have been keeping up, but Georgia's got a pretty good baseball team. This just in, they're 19-2, ranked number 5 in the country, and they have number 10 LSU coming to town. And if you don't keep up with college baseball that much, you don't know all that much about LSU baseball in particular. They got to have a crazy fan base when it comes to LSU baseball. There's no professional team in Louisiana, and so they get followed like a professional team. There'll be a huge contingent of LSU fans there, such as you can get in a facility that takes about 3,000 when you pack it in. All three games sold out this weekend, as I understand it. But I wouldn't give up on trying to get in. If you're thinking about coming in and taking it in, this would be a great weekend to see your first game at Foley Field. That place really rocks. It's got a great atmosphere. It's a small place, and it really rocks when Georgia has a good baseball team. And Scott Strickland really does this year have some unbelievable arms pitchers that I'm going to be writing about at Dog Nation. You'll be able to read that tomorrow for sure. Maybe later today. I got to go over there to Foley Field and meet with Christopher Lako, Scott Strickland, and some of those players in advance of the LSU game. So, like anything else that's going on within the Dog Nation, you can read about there. But as always, football front and center for Georgia athletics, and that's definitely been the case this week with the opening of spring football practice. Practice 1 was on Tuesday. Kirby Smart's pre-spring media press conference was Tuesday. And then, of course, we got to talk to 4 of the principal parties on the team, including Jake Fromm and J.R. Reed, Andrew Thomas, and Michael Barnett, who has become, if nothing else, quite the depended upon spokesperson for the Georgia defense. And so we got to hear from those guys on Tuesday. Mike Griffith and me and the entire Dog Nation team, short of 1 or 2 people, covered that first day. And then yesterday, of course, was Pro Day in Athens, UGA Pro Day, they call it, which has become quite the event. Every NFL team represented, as they have been the last several years. And DeAndre Baker and McCole Hardman among the principal parties they were there to get a look at. Certainly some of the other juniors Isaac Nauta, Elijah Holyfield among them. Um, really wanted to improve upon their showings in the NFL Combine, and I think they did. But as you can read on a take I have filed at Dog Nation, I'm not 100% sure about how much um, all that testing makes a difference. I mean, I really think a lot of these guys have their mind made up. There's no question that DeAndre Baker is going to be a high draft pick. The NFL, by and large, seeks to devalue these guys through this process so they don't have to overpay for them. But I think DeAndre Baker, despite all the negative commentary, is going to be a first round draft pick. And he ran a 4.4 something yesterday, which was one of his big goals. Elijah Holyfield wasn't able to improve much on his 4.8 time. Isaac Nauta did improve on his 4.9 40 time. And you can read a lot about that. D. Orlando Ledbetter, or D-Led as we like to call him, weighed in with Mike Griffith on Dog Nation. You can read their commentary there, see it on video. Mike Griffith covered that from end to end like he does everything. I had a column there, and Connor and Brandon Adams were there as well. So it's been a great week at Dog Nation. We anticipate a great spring, a great March, really a great April. We've got a whole lot going on and a lot to be excited about for the spring because, Georgia, it keeps hopping and we're right there on top of it. Of course, this is an interactive medium. Let me see if I can get your comments called up here, and let me make sure I've got that. Yeah. Let's see here. I love to hear from you guys. You're welcome to take me on any of the viewpoints that I've shared around here with you lately. And let's see what we've got. A lot of people online. That's terrific. We appreciate it. Hello, James Crump, David Willoughby. Can't believe EH's 40 time. He's a good player, though. Yeah, as much as the NFL concentrates on these times and these testing, I don't think they are necessarily married to him either. I definitely think that Elijah Holyfield could be a professional football player. Hello, Patrick Neesmith is here. He's actually an Alabama fan, y'all, but he loves to weigh in on those dogs. Georgia has Alabama's full attention here. And as David Willoughby points out here in another comment, Nauta and Holyfield look fast on the field, and they do. I mean, I'm surprised that Elijah Holyfield hasn't been able to put up a better number than he has on the 40-yard dash. Aren't you, from the standpoint of, I watched him beat a lot of guys to that pylon. In fact, I wrote a story back during the season talking about Elijah Holyfield pylon destroyer because, and I do think that there's a time that you can put on a stopwatch when you're running before 32 individuals on a field, and there's in-game time. That's the thing with DeAndre Baker. Now listen, a 4.52, which I think is what he ran in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. That's not bad. People don't downplay that. 4.5. There's a lot of DBs in the NFL who run 4.5s. Maybe a few safeties and such that run 4.6s and 4.7s. It's not all about speed. Game speed is a different thing. It's about confidence. It's about anticipation. It's about initial quickness. I don't know what DeAndre Baker's first 10 yards are, but they're probably quicker than the average football player. And the bottom line is, and I wrote about this on Dog Nation. I'd love for you to go put your comments on the bottom of my column there. But I talked about, DeAndre Baker has hours and hours of video that NFL players are looking at. And the fact of the matter, wrap your head around this stat for a minute. Well over 700 snaps the last 2 seasons. I don't know exactly how many snaps it's, but it's well over 700. 0 touchdown passes he's given up. And it's not like they haven't come after him. Now, they came after him less and less as the year went along. But, he's faced Alabama twice during that. He's faced Oklahoma during that. He's faced, the entirety of the SEC East. and a lot of other teams, LSU. LSU was going after him for a touchdown. I remember it clear as day. He batted the ball down in the end zone. I can't remember who the receiver is, but that guy, can flat out play football, and they know that. So they're trying to find some weak spots and all that kind of stuff, so they can justify taking him later in the draft than they'll have to. But same thing with Elijah Holyfield. This is a big, strong, tough guy. Um, what was his name? Maybe somebody can remember here. What was the fullback's name that played so well for so long in Tampa Bay? I mean, this guy's a sledgehammer, and I think he can definitely, be a short yardage guy, better out of the backfield than Now, hey, he's not going to get drafted real early, and you could certainly take that into question on Elijah Holyfield's decision to turn pro. I mean, but I kind of, and Isaac Nada as well, for that matter. I mean, I think they had a lot to play for to come back as seniors. Probably most intriguing out of all of that group for me is probably McCole Hardman. I've never questioned McCole Hardman as a future professional athlete, and I think he commands a lot of clout, for lack of a better word, because of his abilities as a returner as well. I mean, the NFL, when you only get 53 on a roster, they love Alstott. That's right. Thank you very much, Nathan Edwards. I appreciate that. Ken Veal weighed in on it as well. And, there's a place for tough, strong guys like Elijah Holyfield in the NFL. The one who blew up the combine more than anybody else, not the combine, but pro day for Georgia yesterday, was Jarvis Wilson. He is such a good looking athlete. But, here's the other side of that. It's not all about, athleticism necessarily. If you think about Jarvis Wilson, he did not start a game in 4 years, came here highly recruited from Tupelo, Mississippi. He's 6'1" and change. I mean, I think he's over 6'1", solid 190, 200 pounds. He ran a sub 4.4 yesterday and did 24 bench presses of 225 pounds more than Lyman or anybody else that Georgia had there yesterday. But is he going to get drafted? No, because he never started a game at Georgia. This is not a knock on, because I like Jarvis Wilson a lot. I think he's a consummate college player. Did a great job to graduate. Gave Georgia and their coaches did everything they asked. But if I asked some coaches and stuff that I know about him, and said, what's the deal? And it's just that he's not hello, Trent Scarborough. He just didn't have the football instincts, is what I was told about him. Just when he's lining up back there in safety, just not enough of the anticipatory instincts that you need, that everybody has to have, and I think Georgia does have, and J.R. Reed and Richard LeCounte and Tyreek McGee to some degree. They're strong back there in that back third, and he hasn't been able to break into the lineup. But the NFL is going to fight. If you've got talent, they'll find you. They'll recognize it, particularly in football. Matt Talley says, I've been dropping some great articles the past few days. I never hear that. Thank you so much, Matt Talley. I appreciate that. We're all writing a lot. Mike Griffith's doing some great work. So is Connor Riley, who gives you your UGA report every morning, first thing at 6 a.m. Let me see some thumbs up if you read that first thing in the morning on your data devices, whichever one you find. Yeah, that's right, Jacob McMillan, a sub 4.4, up there in the high 4.3s. So he can absolutely. Georgia's got some cookers now. Jason Stanley, I don't know what he ran yesterday, but he's one of the fastest players on Georgia's team, bar none, this year. And Georgia has some really fast players. McCole Hardman did not run because he put a 4.33 on the 40 in the combine in Indianapolis. Good to see that all you guys read UGA today. That's a wonderful feature that Connor Riley provides for us every day. Let's see, we're getting a little backed up here James Crump says McCole probably goes to Pittsburgh if they don't get AJ Brown. I listen, man. Mock drafts are to me are more convoluted and uncertain than recruiting is almost. Yeah, it's still moving. Those are hand times, Jamal, and that's what makes a difference. And that's uh, I don't know how much people respect McCole Hardman's 4.33 that he put on the at in Indianapolis, but that's pretty impressive. Anizio Gibson says here, pro days are just eye tests for teams that have an idea who they need and who they can fill needs with. And it's also, I mean, I think people like Bill Belichick um, has a field day at these type of events. I mean, I think he's looking for the free agent that he can take, like David Andrews. Lamont Galliard was there yesterday, and love Galliard. What a great player. What a great story. A guy who starts out in defensive line, he's not getting any looks over there, ends up moving over to offense, ends up being all SEC and some might say all America. Certainly a Remington Award candidate as a center, fantastic player, and he whether he'll get drafted or not, I don't know. But I mean, that's the kind of guy, just like David Andrews, gets snapped up by the New England Patriots. Or the Patriots aren't the only ones who do this. Excuse me, a little parched. I mean, all these teams are looking for that guy that they don't have to draft who makes the roster. So I think Lamar Galliard's that guy. But yesterday the whole NFL testing phenomenon. He runs you see Galliard out there, and he ran the 40 two or three times. And when you see a big center and he's got the gut like most of those linemen, right down there running as hard as he can, it's like, how many times are you ever going to see that in a football game? I mean, the fastest I ever saw David Andrews run was, I think it was the Georgia Tech game when Georgia scored and David Andrews goes running down the field, celebrating, was flying down there. It's about everything that happens in 3 yards in front of you at that position, and you do have to be quick, and that shows athleticism and all that. But I think Galliard is a great guy. Laura Woodard weighs in here. Jarvis Wilson killed it, and he did. And who knows? Maybe that earned him an NFL tryout somewhere. Maybe somebody will take a chance on him. It'll be eager to see. I'll be eager to see. Interesting to see. Whatever you want to say. It's going to be really cool to see how they do. Georgia in the draft. And listen, Kirby weighed in on this. We talked about the first day. That was the first chance to talk to Kirby in, I think somebody wrote, like 77 days. So we had a lot of question. Hey, Danny Smith, glad you made it. It's better late than never, right? Appreciate that. Same to you, Jimmy Taylor. Appreciate you being here. But it's what was I saying? It's interesting when they get out there and run those things, and whether they put a big number up or not, these teams know what they want. But yeah, Kirby talking about. Thanks for Kirby talking about. He surprised that these four guys, underclassmen, decided to go pro, and I definitely question the validity or the logic behind Elijah Holyfield and Isaac Nauta for sure. To a lesser degree, McCole Hardman and Riley Ridley. I mean, I can understand that. I think, obviously they couldn't have hurt themselves by coming back to Georgia. Might have even improved their situations. But nowadays, it's just you got to kind of take the money and run when you can. And I can see that. But Nauta and Elijah, that's got to be just personal experience. But Kirby said he does not begrudge them whatsoever, whether he actually feels that way or not. And he wants them to go as high as possible because that's good for Georgia. And the fact of the matter is, the basis under which Georgia is recruiting most of the time nowadays is, come here in order to fulfill your NFL dreams. I mean, it's, we all go to college with the hopes of becoming a professional. I went to college hoping to become a sports writer and a professional journalist, and they go to college hoping to become a professional football player. Just so happens that their vocation earns a little bit more money than mine does, as does doctor and lawyer and a lot of other things. But I'm very happy doing what I'm doing, and I know they'll be happy. And I think all of those guys are going to end up somewhere, right? And they would have sooner or later, but it's just going to be sooner in their cases. Now, the flip side of that, and there's a story about this up at Dog Nation, is the case of J.R. Reed. J.R. Reed told me that this was the hardest decision he's ever had to make, up to and equal to, I guess, transferring from Tulsa to come to the University of Georgia. But he was really serious about turning pro too. And I've got a story. You can read all his comments about that and other things. But man, could you imagine not having J.R. Reed back there in that back third right now? Because he is a very, very important part of Georgia's defensive secondary, for no other reason than being a captain and the leader and helping teach all these young guys what to do. But he's a good safety in and of itself. And I think that back line for Georgia, might be one of the better set of safeties in the SEC. Now I haven't reviewed everybody, and I can't swear to it. But when you think about J.R. Reed, I mean, is he all conference, all America? I don't know. But between him, Richard LeCount, who I think has some incredible upside, and Tyreek McGee, who plays most of the time at the nickel, that's some solid, really good experience. If not through the roof talent, that's some great experience on your back line. And that's one of the reasons Georgia doesn't give up, a bunch of long, explosive plays, fast plays in particular. Now, there have been a couple in the past couple of years, but and those we can all cite, but not many. And then you add to that, you got a lot of new blood coming in, a lot of young guys. And if they can outplay any of these guys at the safety positions, or certainly win any of those jobs at the corners of the positions underneath, that's a heck of a secondary. So I don't see secondary as a weakness for Georgia, even though you lose DeAndre Baker. You're going to start the spring with Tyson Campbell and Eric Stokes. I think Stokes is a great story. The fact that he basically earned that position out from under Tyson Campbell, and now Tyson Campbell, who obviously is very talented, is going to take over that right cornerback position for DeAndre Baker. And then Georgia has a bunch of other guys that'll be in there trying to get it. You can't forget about Devad Wilson. You can't forget about Mark Webb. You can't forget about these new guys that are coming in. Tyreek Stevenson, the latest 4-star, 5-star blue chipper coming in from Miami. What an unbelievable thing to establish a Miami pipeline like Georgia has these past few years under Kirby Smart for their defensive backfield. That's a big deal. Sorry, running off at the mouth a little bit. Let me get back to your questions. How do you think we look at linebacker? I'm sorry, I missed. That's James Crump. Linebacker is an extremely intriguing position for me. Now, I think in and of itself, with Tay Crowder and Monty Rice, I think you're solid. But a couple of things about that. One, I don't think you're, all conference caliber, necessarily with those two right there. And that's what you achieve to, right? Number two, depth. I really like Channing Tindall. I like Quay Walker. I think both of those guys are going to have something to say about it. And then you've got Nakobe Dean, of course, and then the other freshman who's actually coming in work. Y'all remind me the freshman inside linebacker that's coming in, but it's a little bit hurt right now. I think there's great potential there. Injuries are going to be a big deal. Monty Rice stayed beat up last year, and I think Monty Rice is a great player. Some good pictures they're showing you right now from downtown on that linebacker core. I think they're solid. Really, more importantly, is that defensive line in front of them. And so if you read my 16-part series breaking down the positions, and I know all of you read every word of all of that. But anyway, actually defensive line was not an area that I was all that concerned with coming into the spring. I like the maturity there. I like the new additions there. I like all that. But now it turns out there's a good bit of injuries going on. I had no idea that Julian Rochester was coming off a knee injury. He's not going to be able to go. There's a few of those guys that aren't going to be able to go. And that's a big concern. D Red talking about Otis Reese here. I hope I mentioned Otis Reese, because if I didn't, I meant to. But he's going to figure in that safety rotation right out of the box. He's putting some heat on Richard LeCounte, who I think Richard LeCounte is a really, really special player who just needs. I mean, this to me is the year that LeCounte will come out. He's a real ball hawk, a little bit small for the position, but really a ball hawk and should be really, really confident about what he's doing back there. Um, Tony Porter asked a great question. Devad Wilson at nickel or corner. Well, he played corner in the Sugar Bowl. That was a surprising um, show up there. He played both cornerback and some nickel. Now I think about it, in the Sugar Bowl. But Devad Wilson is a guy that Kirby was loving the very first spring that he showed up from Miami, and then he tore his knee in the first week, and has had to sit out ever since then. The other question, into the spring, the two other big questions, obviously the wide receivers, who's going to step up there again. I'm not that concerned because I think there's plenty of numbers and plenty of potential at that position. Now, running back is a little bit more interesting to me because you have the DeAndre Swift factor. He's just great, and could be poised for a Heisman Trophy season, but there's the durability factor. And then we find out from Kirby Smart under no uncertain terms, and we thought this. I wrote about this. Should be the expectation. Thank you on Tresman Marshall, Dre. Is it Bussey or Busey? Sorry about that. I should remember that. I had committed all these guys to memory. Actually, both of them are hurt. You're right. Ryan Davis and Tresman Marshall. But those running backs, I have great faith in Brian Herrien, but we find out that for sure Zamir White is not going to go at all in the spring. So that's going to put him behind. That means that he'll be making his comeback in August in preseason camp. And you know that you've got to be careful during that time. Double knee surgeries, and neither of them were contact injuries. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Onita Holloman is here. JJ Holloman's mama. Thanks for joining us. We love it that you hang out with us from time to time. And we were just talking about how excited we are about JJ and the type of season and impact that he can make at wide receiver for Georgia. Certainly a leader at that position. But Ray Red Jr., back to my point, I think the best news that I heard regarding running backs, because I was not surprised by the Zamir White news, but was on James Cook. The fact that he had that Liz Frank surgery and that his foot is recovered and he's going to be able to go through spring practice. He injured his foot in bowl practices. And when you're talking about a foot injury, you've got what he had, and he's back from already. And then you have what David Marshall had. And David Marshall's still not back. And that's a big deal on the defensive line. I definitely, think David Marshall is probably one of the biggest X factors heading in to 2019 period. Sorry, Connor. Connor's been flashing 5 minutes for me here for about 15 minutes or so. So we only got, a couple of minutes or so. But let's take some questions now for sure. And I'll take your comments as well. D Red makes a statement here. Zeus, Cook. I think that's the future for sure. I don't think there's any question DeAndre Swift turns pro after this year. James Crump says LeCounte needs to tackle better. I believe adding more weight will help. That's one of those things. LeCounte has never been very big for a safety, but if you, like I'm sure James is talking about too, he's in position to make plays so often, whether that be on the ball or in the tackle, and he just needs to get a little bit better. At that, and I think you will see as a freshman that, as a junior, that he'll make strides like that. Ms. Holloman, we tried to set up JJ to throw out the first pitch in the Coney County Little League, and I understand he had travel trouble. So J.R. Reed filled in and threw out the ceremonial first pitch for a Coney County Little League. But I know JJ was willing and committed to do that, and we appreciate it. And that just shows the kind of upbringing he had. And I bet he was a pretty decent Little League baseball player in his own time as well over there in Rockdale County. Matt Talley points out David Marshall just can't seem to catch a break with the injury bug. And listen, when David Marshall is healthy, I'm not sure he's not better than Jonathan Ledbetter. when it comes to defensive end. I mean, he's a really good impact player there. So Georgia really needs him to get healthy and have him ready to go in the fall. And I think they will. I think that's why they're gonna play it conservative with him in this spring. James Crump, they will test Zeus. Now, he wasn't on the field for practice one, but based on what I've seen with Nick Chubb and many others before him, he'll be running around taking handoffs, probably probably with the practice. He'll probably be out there in practice. You won't be able to tell the difference in what Zamir White is doing and everybody else, if it's like a lot of those other are, and that's it. He'll be running plays and everything else. Ladies and gentlemen, Teresa Hilliard-Harrion is here as well. We really appreciate that. We were just talking about Brian a while ago, and I'm not saying this just because you're here. Everybody can validate this, Ms. Harrion. I said I think Georgia is perfectly fine, and in fact, it has a great backup in Brian Harrion, and makes a great thunder to DeAndre Swift Lightning. And as we all recall from that North Carolina game in 2016, there's a little lightning to Brian Harrion's game as well. So those guys like that, y'all, that are just getting their opportunities, junior, sophomore, redshirt sophomore year, junior year, senior year, those guys are physically mature, emotionally and psychologically mature. They can make a big difference for you. Great question from Anthony Sumbry about can Nolan Smith have as many sacks as Jarvis Jones? Not expecting much from him, are you? I don't know how much Nolan Smith gets on the field in first year. I know I've read all of Jeff Santel's takes on him. But that's going to be a tough position. Whatever cream rises to the top at that position is going to be very, very rich because they have some great recruits and with a lot of potential out there. So if Nolan Smith, who is here for spring practice, ends up getting a lot of reps there, and I'm sure he will, he will have earned them, and he's going to be really, really good. Yes, D. Rob, I expect that's a reference to Demetrius Robertson. I expect he'll have a breakout year as well. You got to think about that. Here's Demetrius Robertson transferring to Georgia from Cal. You couldn't get any more high profile as a recruit. You couldn't even get any more high profile as a transfer. And he ends up not having to catch the entire season. That, to me, says more about Georgia's receiving core than it does about Demetrius Robertson, because he played a position inside at that flanker where you had Mecole Hardman, you had Terry Godwin to some degree, and you had Akil Crumpton, and he couldn't work his way into the regular rotation. They just had a few special plays for him here and there. I think he will take over there. I think he's going to be in better shape. I think he's probably worked till he's ready to throw up on blocking downfield, which is a big part for Kirby, any Kirby Smart player. They're going to have to be able to block from that position, and I'm sure he's worked on it a lot. There's a time element involved to this they have other shows and stuff that they have to produce. BA, he's on every 30 minutes. I think he's got a DN 90 that'll go up a little later this afternoon. So give me a few more questions and let me know if there's anything I can answer for you. And I will try to see James Crump sucking up to Ms. Harrion here. Harrion, the most underrated player on the team, in our opinion. That could well be true. And speaking of throwing out, Ms. Holloman, the JJ scheduled to throw out the first pitch of that Coney County Little League. Brian Harrion came with Terry Godwin a couple of years ago. I remember that very, very well. And he was so kind and generous with his time. He sat there and signed autographs for those Little League kids for a half an hour or 45 minutes after that. So I know you got a special young man in Brian, and we're all wishing for a big year for him and for great health as well, because we know it's a big year for him as far as his professional aspirations as well. John Bo Gilder, Ryan is no backup. He's earned everything. Give him the same number of touches, and he'll give you the same number of plays. Yeah, I believe that. Definitely. What else? So let's start to wrap it up here. Again, day 2 of spring football later today. Mike Griffith and I will be wrapping those days up, practice days at the end of the day. Every time they practice, the general schedule this spring session is what it's usually been. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, they'll have practices, 15 practices to the G-Day game on April 20th. NCAA tournament starting today, and we're looking forward to that. Off topic, Patrick Neesmith says, any word on the Arena Football League in Athens? There is an Arena League football game, I think, tonight or this weekend at the Classic Center. They were called the Peach Cats, I think, or Peach State Cats. I don't know all that much about that, but we will keep an eye on it and see if any Georgia players end up playing it. Don't forget about to get your brackets in. If you haven't done one already, it's about the last chance for you to do that. And then, of course, Georgia LSU baseball. Number 5, Georgia 19-2, off to an unbelievable start. Plays host to number 10 LSU this weekend. And as Kirby Smart alluded earlier week, just part of some great spring sports action going on at Georgia this year between the women's tennis team, the men's tennis team, the golf team. Really, really a good spring for those Georgia Bulldogs. So I'm going to wrap it up here, much to Connor Riley's delight, so we can get along to other things. I've got to get over to the university, and I've got some interviews to do with baseball, and you'll be able to read about that later. And then, of course, Mike Griffith and I will be all over practice 2 of the spring football session. So for everybody at Dog Nation, this is Chip Towers. I appreciate you hanging out. For Towers Take Live on Facebook, we'll be here at the same time next week, God willing. Y'all take care. See you.